son of the Jacksons.
Good evening. I'd like to call the special town meeting for Dudley to order. It's July 26, 2018. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:38. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks for coming out this evening for the special town meeting to address Article 1. We'll be talking about that in just a couple of moments. Just as a couple of reminders, Robert's Rules of Order do apply this evening. If it's applicable by unanimous consent, I'd like to limit remarks to 2 minutes at the mic. I will defer to petitioners, though, and extend time as needed, but let's keep that where it needs to be. Second, if there are any contentious issues that need to be brought up or addressed, please direct them through me, the chair. No personal conversations against any other person who's been at the mic or will be up at the mic. This is about an issue. This is not about the person. Moving on, I'd like to turn it over to our town clerk, Laura Finn, to introduce our...
Is this on, Fred? To either of the constables in the town of Dudley and the county of Worcester, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Dudley, qualified to vote in elections and town affairs, to meet at the Dudley Municipal Complex, 71 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass., in the Veterans Memorial Hall, room 321A, on Thursday, July 26, 2018, and other such times as may be voted if needed at 6:30 p.m., then and there to take action on the following articles.
Thank you.
And dispense with the reading. Okay. You are hereby directed to serve this warrant by posting attested copies thereof at the Dudley Municipal Complex and on the Town of Dudley website, and posting notice of availability of the warrant on one cable access channel. Warrant to be posted at least 7 days before holding of said meeting. Hereof fail not and make due return of this warrant with your doing thereon to the town clerk at the time of holding of said meeting. Given under our hands this 2nd day of July in the year 2018, Stephen Sullivan, Chairman, Carrie Siganevich, Vice Chairman, John Marcy, Dudley Board of Selectmen. I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Dudley by posting up attested copies of the same at the Dudley Municipal Complex on the 18th day of July. I also observed it posted on the town's website and notice of availability on the Dudley Cable Access Channel on the 18th day of July 2018, thereby making my return to the Dudley Town Clerk on the 18th day of July 2018. Pellegrino J. Diorio, Constable, Town of Dudley.
Thank you, Laura. Just so everybody's aware, there are several folks who are standing. Their registrars will allow them to remain standing for the meeting. Everybody else should just remain in your seat during the meeting. If you need to exit the room, please feel free. And we do have one non-Dudley resident. He is a part of the petitioning party from Forefront Power, Ed Switzer, so I'll permit him to speak. Other than that, I don't believe we'll have any non-residents speaking this evening. So, jump on into Article 1. Article 1, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws and zoning bylaws map relative to large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations by amending Section 3, Special Use Regulations 3.12.00, large-scale solar photovoltaic 3.12.02, applicability. Second paragraph, by adding the following phrase immediately following the words, with the town clerk at the existing end of said paragraph, comma, and as shown on the map entitled Zoning Map Amendment, Proposed Solar Overlay District Parcels 215, 019, 000, and 215, 019, 001, 000, 99 Ramshorn Road, Dudley, Mass., dated March 2018, which map is hereby made a part of the zoning bylaws and official zoning map and is on file in the office of the Planning Board and the Town Clerk. And by adopting the above-referenced zoning map amendment per the above-referenced map, which is to be on file with the Town Clerk and the Planning Board, and by amending the existing zoning map to include said solar overlay district, or take any other action relative thereto. Planning Board.
Mr. Moderator, the Planning Board held a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law on June 27th, 2018. And after this public hearing, the Planning Board's recommending to approve of this article.
Could you read the motion?
The whole motion again?
No. The planning board's going to be making a motion based on the language of the article as it was read and written.
Right.
A motion on the floor?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any comments?
Moderator,
Yes, sir.
did the planning board actually make a motion? Did he say, "I move"?
For clarification purposes, I'll go ahead and just ask you to say I move to.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve this Article 1 of this warrant.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Yes. Just please state your name for the record.
Richard Raymond, 191 Corbin Road, Dudley. Just so we fully understand what's going on here, there's a motion on the floor to approve the warrant as was read,
Yes.
and the warrant would allow for, if I'm reading it correctly, for lack of a better description, spot zoning of residential area into industrial area.
No.
Well, a large-scale solar farm, my understanding is a manufacturing of electricity, and that's all it's doing, and you want to put it in a residential area.
So, planning board?
Can I answer from here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what's happening is we have an overlay district for large-scale solar photovoltaic systems in the town of Dudley. And right now, any parcel could be added to this overlay district. These two parcels, yes, they are in residential area, but we're not rezoning the land to industrial, it's staying residential. What we're allowing is this one use for the solar on this property. It's an overlay for this one use. And any parcel in town could be considered for this overlay.
Are we opening ourselves up for a precedent in town to move the manufacturing of anything, all right, into a residential area?
No,
Well, I don't know why we wouldn't be if you want an overlay on a in a residential area.
We don't have an overlay district for manufacturing. We only have an overlay district for solar.
But
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. And I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay.
um,
Point of order is noted. We'll let you come back up to the mic in a moment if anybody else has an additional question.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I think what we're doing is similar to the mill conversion overlay district where
Correct.
Stevens Linen, Adlock, Stevens Linen, Schofield Ave, and third one, which escapes me at this time, remained manufacturing if somebody ever wanted to come back. And all we did by the mill conversion overlay was allow more uses, but it reverted back to the base zoning, for want of a better term. So this will remain residential with the solar overlay district just being expanded. So 20 years from now, if they take that down, somebody can build a house there.
Right.
It's not converting to manufacturing only. It's just an expansion of the overlay district.
In the solar overlay district, the only additional use that's allowable is solar.
Solar,
That's
right, so
it.
no manufacturing, no
Other
component.
than residential?
Right, what's currently there is still permitted, but
I'm sorry.
the only additional use is solar. Not manufacturing or any kind of industrial use.
Yes.
Whoops. Jerry Frank, Causeway Road. Wow. I just want to say that I remember maybe, I'm not sure how long ago, like 15, 20 years ago, the town redid the zoning for Dudley. It was a major overhaul of the zoning, and at the time we did, a survey was done, and the biggest thing that came back in that survey from the people in Dudley was that they wanted to keep the rural character of Dudley. I mean, that was the main feedback that we got from Dudley. And so I think, at the time, 15, 20 years ago, I agree that, solar farms didn't exist. So it's hard to say whether that was the intent or not the intent of what the people in Dudley wanted, but things things change. But I'd also like to say that back then, one of the issues was we had to have an overlay area, I guess, for towers for cell phones. And one of the things that was put into that was that it was required that if somebody puts up a cell phone tower, that phone tower be made available to other cell phone companies to use it. So I'm not sure if that's still part of our zoning or not, but that's the way it was. And I just think that regardless of how the vote goes tonight, I would recommend that the planning board takes a similar action and look into better use of land for solar farms. In other words, maybe it could be put into the zoning that, new parking lots be made available to third parties, to other parties for solar, so that these overlay areas in the future grow into areas that are already, like a parking lot or on top of a commercial building or something like that, instead of onto open land or farmland, which I don't think is really the best use of land, of that kind of land in Dudley. Thank you.
Yes.
Linda Bazinet, Pierpont Road. I just have a question. Does the town benefit from this new solar thing? I was reading in the paper about all the solar, and you're putting one on the landfill, and I guess I feel like the town's turning solar, and who's getting the benefit from it?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I'm going to defer to the town administrator in a minute, but we had at the previous meetings, town administrator through the assessor's office and treasurer collector presented the revenue that we have generated through the solar farms, and I'll defer to Greg, but yes, the short answer is the town can potentially benefit from all of them.
Mr. Belkonis?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Sullivan is correct. The town there's two options. It can be taxed as regular personal property, but the preference would be to enter into what's called a payment in lieu of tax agreement, and that payment in lieu of tax agreement would guarantee a stream of revenue to the town over a course of years. So we have 3 projects that we presently have those agreements with. We would hopefully have one with this project also. The other benefit, more immediate benefit, is that the road gets completed. So if you obtain a copy of the packet that was up front, this is a project that began in the 1970s in different phases, and the road project was abandoned at some point. So this represents a real opportunity with the developer willing to complete the road and do everything that the town has asked of him.
Thank you. I think my other question is, will this solar array, or whatever you call it, be visible from the road, or is it going to be out of sight? Does anyone know?
It's surrounded by more than one road. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be visible. Let Ed handle it.
Mr. Switzer, yes, please approach the mic.
Set back from any major road, including Ramsar.
So we're still in the process of designing it, but the thought is...
Excuse me, Mr. Switzer, could you just introduce your name and just roll?
My name is Ed Schweitzer. I'm with Forefront Tower. The intent is to screen the property on all sides and work with the neighbors to make sure that we provide a visual buffer to the extent practical and to the extent that it makes everyone happy. So that's the goal, is to make it so it's not visible from the road or any residence.
I just referenced the one in front of Shepherd Hill. I still think that is the ugliest thing going. Thank you.
Not going to argue with that.
Yes.
Lori Smith, 112 Pierpont Road. I have a question through the chair. Is there a reason why we had a special town meeting tonight instead of just putting this on the October one? Because I know this was brought up at the May meeting.
Mr. Sullivan?
Again, I'm probably going to misspeak, but there was a question as to the timing because of the credits that are coming through for the solar through the state, I believe. And we were kind of under a deadline. But I'll defer to Ed if you'd rather answer.
I think the answer there is more we were on the May agenda and we just didn't get everything in enough things done in time, and there was also the issue that with the road that we still needed to resolve, that needed to get worked out, which is why it took a couple months to get everything ironed out.
Oh, okay, it doesn't seem, to me, it seems like it would have been better to put this on the October meeting when you have more people. I think there's not as many people. I know it was published, the 7 days, the requirement, but it just almost seems like it's trying to get pushed through while there's not as many people at a meeting. And I just want to make a comment if it's appropriate, just kind of piggybacking on what a previous speaker said. My opinion is we should be limiting solar farms in Dudley. We want to have the rural appeal, and they're the ugliest things going, plus they ruin the land too, because I watched the one at Shepherd Hill. I went by that every day while it was being put in. They took all the loam out of the soil. They put in all of the pea stones. So when these solar farms go, is that going to be, all that pea stones going to be taken out so it could be back to farming if they wanted? That's my other question.
Yes.
Ed Bazinet, Pierpont Road. Can you hear me? All right. Anybody that steps up here, please put your voice next to this. Not like Mr. Sullivan, who likes to touch it and then talk over here all the time. You know that, Sully.
No one's ever said they can't hear me.
We need to hear, and we have this fabulous mechanical background here. This is lovely. Please step up. And you, sir, have no idea what you said, no idea who you are, so it's very difficult for me to make a decision on anything if I don't know what's being said. And a lot of us in this room are wired, but not wired in the sense that we can tune into it. There are things that we could do if we had telecoil in the building, which we might want to think about. Thank you.
To Mr. Bazinet's point, if anybody has any difficulty hearing, just raise your hand, much like we would do in the Shepherd Hill Auditorium, and I'll ask the speaker to speak up. The speaker's very clear to me from where I'm standing, so I apologize if you can't hear. Mr. Fox? Oh, gotcha. Yes.
Mary Sansucci, I live on Ramshorn Road. I can't find on any of these plot plans how large a parcel of land this is. How many acres is this?
I forget. It's big. It's freaking huge. On this page.
Hey, Ed, it might be easier if you just pull right up to the table here and
It's got all the information.
If you just give,
it's on.
give me a sec. I'm just looking it up.
Huge.
Before he starts, Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
could I ask that he speak loud enough like he's telling kids to get off his lawn? Okay?
Yes, Mr. Joseph. Ed, we're going to need you to speak very loudly.
acres.
This is 42 acres. And what is the topography of this land?
It's
What was the
rolling,
question?
Could you repeat that question, please?
What is the topography?
rolling hills.
And is it wooded or open?
It's currently wooded.
And so you intend to clear cut 42 acres?
No, we do not. We'll preserve all the wetland areas, and we'll provide vegetative buffering and screening around the outside. We're still in the process of working through the site plan design right now. and we plan to work with the neighbors and the community to get a plan that best works there.
Well, you know, when before the solar array went in at Shepherd Hill, I went to those hearings, and I heard all about the arborvitaes and how nobody would be able to see anything. It's a joke. It's awful. It really is. And as far as I'm concerned, if this goes through, there isn't a residential area in Dudley that will be safe from these solar arrays. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Can I ask the planning board, on the overlay district, is there a lot requirement for these to go in? They can't go in like a Res 10, for example, Res 15, right? Not that size.
It could go anyways, but you need,
Not that size.
but you need a certain size. It could go anywheres in town, but you need a certain size lot to produce this kind of solar farm. You can't do it on a 10,000 square foot lot or a 15,000 square foot lot. No, you need a sizable piece of land, more than 10 acres.
Mr. Raymond?
Quite frankly, we really couldn't hear you, what you were saying. You know, I'm sitting right behind you. But before you get back to that, it's my understanding somewhere in the town of Dudley, we have zoning for industrial base and manufacturing base. You can call it solar array, you can call it what you want, you can make it sound like it's a farm. It's not. It's a manufacturing. It's manufacturing of electricity. You know, you can do that in an industrial site. You can do it in an area that's properly zoned for it. It doesn't have to be in a residential area.
Just a point of reference too, Mr. Moderator, it's in a Res 87, which is a 2-acre minimum requirement for lots. It's not in a Res 10, it's not in a Res 15, it's in a Res 87.
That's our largest residential area.
It is our biggest residential zoning.
Yes. Nope. My fault. They all went up at the same time.
Marcia Wagner, Hickory Drive. Closer? Okay. I heard Mr. Horn say that there's an overlay district that the town voted on for solar purposes. My understanding when that happened was it was only relegated to the specific piece of land at that time, not that the town had an overlay district for the whole town for solar over residential. Did I misunderstand the way we voted? I think a lot of people must have misunderstood that. They thought it was for that specific piece of land at that time.
What we voted at a previous town meeting was what we voted at a previous town meeting was an overlay district for the town of Dudley. That overlay district was passed. And because of that overlay district passing, the other project that was previously requested on Oxford Road, sorry, was also approved. So that parcel of land on Oxford Road, which is right on the Oxford-Dudley border, has approval under the overlay district for a solar farm. Any other parcel in the town of Dudley that meets the requirements for a solar farm, a large-scale solar farm, could be brought forward and asked to be put in the overlay. This is exactly what's happening here. There's two parcels off of Ramshawn Road, 42 acres, I think the gentleman said, total, and they're proposing to do another solar farm there. It doesn't mean that the entire 42 acres is going to be covered with solar panels. It just means that they have a right, after this is approved, to use those two lots, those 42 acres, for a solar farm.
The Massachusetts Department of Energy published guidelines for placements of large solar arrays, and it discourages cutting trees to protect groundwater, and it also discourages placement anywhere that can be farmed. So given the nature and character of Dudley, that's why we wrote the bylaw that's on the books now, and that was approved by the town. So given the proposed amendment, it ignores those guidelines. I would think solar companies in Massachusetts knew about those guidelines and would not be clear-cutting forests. And let's see, there's a stream, I know there's a stream on that property. I know that property well. It's a lot of downhill. How is cutting trees going to affect that stream and waterway? And I just don't understand an overlay isn't spot zoning when it's only one property. Thank you.
Mr. Joseph?
Mr. Moderator, I think there are at least a couple of issues. One is whether or not this overlay district is allowed by town bylaw, and is it legal to do so? So I would ask the town administrator, it's just the first issue. Town administrator, could you answer those two questions so we can get that issue out of the way, please?
Excuse me, the article is legal. It was reviewed by town council prior to the May town meeting. The article has not changed, so the article, in the opinion of council, is legal and can be voted.
Thank you. So if I could, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
So that puts that issue to bed. All right? The other issue is it appropriate to put this solar array on the land? I would point out that the only access is a narrow neck off of Ramshorn. I heard Ed say that the property is 42 acres. Did I hear that correct?
Yes.
All right, but I still need my doctor's appointment for my hearing. Aside from that, two questions. One, how many acres of the 42 are you actually planning on putting solar panels? That's number one. And number two, will the array be visible head on, because I don't know the answer, from Ramshorn Road?
Right now, we're still designing it. I would expect it to take around 20 acres, 20 to 25, as far as the physical panels. And
So
we
approximately, if Mr. Moderator, about 50 to 51%?
about, yeah.
Okay. My
and
second question?
In your second question, it would be set back probably around 50 feet from the road, and it's pretty heavily wooded between the road and from where the array would start. So I don't anticipate any visual impacts from the road. But we would go and we would do visual simulations from various points along the road, and have that as part of our application packet to the planning board if this goes forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Fox?
One of the concerns I have listening to everybody, and Ed, as of right now, your project is still in the design phase.
Yes.
Yes. So, in all clear conscience, why would I want to vote for something until I see the final design and what your recommendation is? Without knowing that, I have a concern.
Sure. So we would still have to go through the site plan review and approval process, and there would be a special use permit issued on the property or for the project. So there would be another public hearing as associated with that, where you could come out and provide input on the design then. But we just haven't gone forward and put much effort into the design yet until we know whether or not this overlay zone is approved. Is the best answer I can give you. But we plan to work with the community in the next few months while we're developing the plans.
That only partially answers my question, because if this gets approved tonight, you could pretty much put any design on the table that you want.
No,
And the taxpayers don't know that.
that's not true, Mr. Moderator. I
So-
believe, and Mr. Horn can correct me they still have to go through site plan review. All
Yes,
this
I understand.
is, well, that's where the conditions and that's where the design comes into play. I mean, what he's talking about is all this gives them approval to move forward. It's just one small step in the process, in my opinion. And just a little bit of history on that piece of property. And I'm sure at one time it was farmed, and I'm sure it was a long time ago. As Mr. Balcones, our town administrator, stated, at one time there was going to be houses. We had a zoning board of appeals had a side memorandum of understanding with the property owner. We gave them, through our recommendation, the ZBA gave them permission to reduce frontage, which generally meant they could have less of frontage to access those two lots. And the net result was the developer was going to finish Partridge Hill Road, as Mr. Balcones said, was started in the 70s, was never finished. The solar company has agreed, as part of their approval, to pick up the developer's responsibility to finish that road, which benefits, obviously, the residents on that road, but it benefits the town, because as it stands now, we got school buses going up there, town vehicles, the plow truck has to go up because 1,000 feet of the road is public and roughly 1,000 is private. So I think just by granting this request to increase the overlay district does not stop the town's ability to put conditions on that project or to make suggestions towards screening, towards how much you can actually use. The planning board will have a lot of latitude when the time comes, and there will be public hearings similar to the one they had when they had this zoning amendment approved, which I would think if I went back and looked at the records, I can't imagine even this many people were there. And to the previous speaker way back who said, I wish more people could be here. Well, we had a town meeting in May, we voted on a budget, and I think we had about the same amount of people.
Okay, so eventually we'll have to go back to town meeting anyway.
No, it goes to the zoning board for a special permit, site plan review.
Planning board.
No, not till they vote and allow them to finish.
Until the planning board votes.
Correct.
But once it leaves here tonight, this will not come before the town meeting in October.
No, because this is a town meeting right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Susan Brown, Flaxfield Road, Dudley. I feel as though the solar array that we have in front of Shepherd Hill was misrepresented to us. And we were told that the rural character of the community would be preserved. And I feel every day that I drive past it, it's a terrible eyesore. I can understand why town leaders want a road repaired, but I think this is the wrong way to go about getting a road repaired. If we need to build the road, we should build the road. The town of Dudley should build the road. And I further think that we should change the warrant, or whatever it's called, so that there can't be an overlay district like this. I think it's a terrible, terrible, I feel as though the town officials aren't really caring about the community, aren't really caring about what it should look like in the future, how it should be for the residents. I know you have the best of possible intentions, but I completely disagree with them. And I'd like to move the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
the speaker cannot speak and then move the question.
That's correct. Yes.
Pat Fanning French, Partridge Hill Road. I'd just like to make a comment to everybody so that you understand the positives of this project. I hate the solar array in front of Shepherd Hill also. I'm a resident of Partridge Hill Road. Our road is owned by a private owner who has never taken any responsibility for the road. He also owns this plot of land that he has agreed to put money aside or in bond to fix our road so that it could be accepted by the town at some point. There have been, over the 26 years that I've lived there, there's been at least 2 times that the town has threatened to stop plowing private roads. Partridge Hill Road is a big hill. I live on the private part of it, as I think there's 8 houses. And if we can't get the town to accept the road, which they won't unless it's brought up to their standards, we're up the creek. I mean, who knows in a few years if the town's budget is tight and they decide to stop plowing private roads, we have no recourse. Like, we're gonna have to pay to have the road plowed ourselves. So that's why the residents of Partridge Hill Road are in favor of this. And if anybody is looking, and sees the solar array, it's gonna be the people on Partridge Hill Road because we're up on a hill above it. So I just wanna say that, I understand all your concerns, but we have concerns too with our road that has been over 30 years private and falling into disrepair, and we're concerned every winter with how, is the town gonna plow? Are they gonna sand? Are we gonna be able to get up to our house? So I just wanted you to understand, it's more than just the solar array.
Thank you. Yes?
Hello, my name is Kathy Hurst from 15 Camelot Circle. I didn't come prepared with any notes, so I just scribbled some things down as I was listening to everything. 42 acres is a big parcel of land. I'd read something recently, and although solar energy seems to be a popular way to go, solar energy is not as green as you may think. There's an impact on the environment, hazardous waste materials, many different kinds, including mercury contamination. That is why when a solar farm is being dismantled, a large solar facility like that would cost millions of dollars in hazardous waste.
Point of order, what is the basis for that figure? I don't understand. Where did that come from?
You read on it. And just a lot of different things. How does this impact the property values? What is the impact to health risks, including electromagnetic fields? We haven't even studied all of that yet. How about endangered species?
Just going to ask one more time for a point of clarification, rather than opinions. If you're going to cite facts or state them as facts, I would ask that the sources of those facts be stated.
Oh, I can. I just pulled them up on.
That's where I was. That's where I was just coming in.
I'm asking questions. Show me the data that this isn't true.
No, I'm not going to allow that.
What about leaching toxic waste into the environment?
Just hold on a moment. The issue at hand is the article as it's written. The questions about the applicability and the dangers of solar, the dangers of dismantling will come up at a future public meeting, public hearing. I'm not going to allow us to go down a road of what may be. This is
I think that.
Pardon me. This is about the special use regulation as it's written in the article.
Well, I think these things should be considered before that article is passed. I mean, there's an old saying, the wise man points to the sky and sees the moon, and the foolish man points to the sky and sees his finger.
No, absolutely. I think one of the issues at hand, though, the procedure and policies that we have in town to get us to a town meeting have been addressed previously in open forums, in public setting. So a lot of these questions should have been asked previous. I agree that they're appropriate. I just want to point out that we need to pay attention to that process.
Well, I think you've heard some other questions about how is this going to impact wetlands. When you start deforestating the land there, it's going to change the whole process of where water goes. And where is this in relation to even the bird sanctuary? And where's the last Green Valley? What do they have to say about this?
So I'll permit another 1 minute if you have any additional questions.
Like I said, endangered species, plants, are you going to say this can be done before you do those studies?
I'm not sure. Could she, God forbid, could she repeat the question? I really didn't understand it.
I think the question, and if the summary of the question is acceptable, that I'll restate. The summary of the question was, what are the dangers to the environment?
Well, I just picked out different points as far as environmental hazards. Before you even say you can put this in 42 acres in an area that's residential, have you considered the impacts on all of these things? And with the leaching into the water table, health risks, endangered species risks, how does this fit into the last Green Valley and all of that area that's supposed to be protected? I just want to know that people should be thinking about this before they say yes, it's okay to do.
Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
And last time I talk honest, that's all part of the process when they come forward with their plan. It's no different than if somebody wanted to build a manufacturing facility that was in an area that's not allowed. We have the overlay district, and we increased the conversion use district. It just gives them the right to come forward and go through the process with the town, similar to other processes we've gone through recently. We had a rather contentious process off of Corbin Road that the people went through the process. We've had a process ongoing with Stevens Linen concerning possible conversion to condominiums, going through the process. Just because it'll give them the right to do it doesn't mean they will do it. And the answer to the previous speaker, I think, and I defer to Mr. Horn, any of those questions concerning leaching and runoff and potential deforestation, the town has an engineer that will review all the plans. And to the previous speaker, I appreciate your last sentence where you said we probably have the best interest in heart. I think the 4 members that are here and the planning board members who get no compensation have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that we have the best interest in heart. And if you can't trust the planning board with their engineer to ensure, and you can't trust the board of selectmen with their town administrator and town council to be sure we have the best interest in heart, then I'm sorry. I think we have probably overstated our importance as selectmen, which is probably not very important, but it just gives the right to have it happen. There's no guarantee that it will. Someone said done deal before. That's not fair, and that's not right. It wasn't a done deal at the previous Corbin Road issue. It's not a done deal with the condos, and I personally can't think of anything that's been more contentious than those last 2 issues since I've been involved since 2001 in the planning board. And again, if you don't think, I'm not sure how he's going to vote. Mr. Ruder's got about 5 generations in this town. Mr. Massey moved the town like I did. We don't do it to sit up here. We just trying to move the town forward. Is solar farms the almighty answer? No, but Mr. Massey and I were talking. It's growth. It's what's available to the town. People say we need ambulance, we need police, we need fire, we need growth. And again, it's not a done deal. I was offended when someone yelled done deal.
Mr. Massey, and then at the back.
Yeah, I was taking some notes here earlier, but, Steve, you touched on something important. I mean, our role as selectmen and planning board is to look at the interests of the entire town at once. I have a lot of people, matter of fact, I ran on economic development for this town. Okay, again, we're trying to look a few steps ahead to say what is in this for the town. A few people asked. Okay, at least we have low 50s people here, the exact same amount we had in the Maytown meeting where this was on, which we pushed out until we had all of our ducks in a row, all the agreements in place. And I thought that was lightning speed for something in the municipal world, just say that. But economic development, what levers do we have to pull? Everybody's like, we need more business. Okay, where are we going to put it? We have no water, sewer, infrastructure, no place to connect, no money to do that. Okay, other than grants that our representatives above us are trying to get us. So, to Mr. Sullivan's point, solar, I don't like it in front of Shepherd Hill either. It's awful. I drive my kids there every day. It's awful. But it's going to provide a revenue source where we can do some of the things that people want in this town. Okay? I mean, what else are we going to get it? I want someone to tell me that, other than taxes. Otherwise it's the cycle of overrides and everything. So that's why we talked about breaking out the solar revenue, and Mrs. Wagner is the one who brought this to my attention, that we should do this, to bring this as a line item. So here's our revenue to the town, here's how much of it is solar, so people can see that number grow. Okay? That is what we have for economic development. Would I love to see a brewery at the mill, that direction? Yes. And that's why the planning board is important, right?
You see the brewery at the town hall.
Well, yeah, it could be, but,
half the roof's gone.
you know, your planning board is very important, right? So this means people can go and make sure that the conditions on this are such that everybody is satisfied. That's what it's for. Okay, but I just want everybody to see from a little bit higher level why we would be interested in something like this. Plus, it fixes a road. Our legal costs are getting paid. This makes sense on a lot of levels. I understand that the whole spot zoning issue, I get it. But this is a special circumstance, again, that started in the 70s when boards used to say yes to everything, and we certainly don't say yes to everything. So.
But it's not spot zoning.
Thanks, Mr. Massey.
Thank you.
Karen Majo, Partridge Hill Road. I have a couple of questions. I just want to be clear that what we're talking about tonight is just that one parcel of land that we're voting on tonight, not an overlay of several parcels of land in Dudley, mysterious, maybe out there somewhere, that we're just voting on this one parcel of land off of Ramshorn Road tonight.
Mr. Belly.
Correct?
Do it quick. Yeah.
Two parcels of land.
Two that are connected.
Co-joined.
And I have a question for you, sir. Did you put those solar panels next to the high school, your company?
No, I did not.
Thank you. That's all.
Yes, sir, at the back. Nope. I'll call you by name, Mr. Raymond.
Jeffrey Major, 36 Partridge Hill Road. I'd just like to address a couple of alternate thoughts on these plots of land and the development. Most of the residents that I'm aware of up on Partridge Hill Road, I think we're all what I would call green folks. We're all very environmentally concerned. And we've thought long and hard about, do we want solar panels at the bottom of our hill? Because I'm going to see them every day for the duration that I live there. But the reality is that this space is not going to be preserved as 42 acres of wooded land. The alternative is, if this project doesn't move forward, there are probably going to be 25 houses that are developed down on that property, which means that all of those woods are going to be clear-cut instead of maybe only 20 or 25 acres. It means that there is going to be that added tax burden to the town for the school systems and all the services associated with that. So as much as I understand, and one of the reasons we moved to Dudley, because it's a rural community, and I understand wanting to protect that, but I think in this case, for these parcels, the reality is it's either this project or a development that is going to destroy everything down there anyhow. I would rather look down on solar panels than development of 25 houses and everything that would come with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point.
Mr. Raymond.
Yes, I'd like to go back to Mr. Fox's question of if it's approved tonight. I understand it's going to get back to a bunch of public hearings on siting and, and everything else. But I'll make a pun for Mr. Fox. The fox is in the hen house at that point. You approve it tonight, okay? What's going to happen is just a matter of tweaking the site plan, tweaking this, tweaking that. It's going to happen. So the question, I think, tonight is whether if the article doesn't get approved, the project doesn't go through. I don't think there's anybody in town that I'm aware of that is really opposing, all right, economic growth, opposing a solar. You can call it an array, you can call it what you want. They're producing electricity. It's a solar manufacturing. The question tonight is, should it go there or somewhere else in town? And I think that's the question tonight. Does it belong there or somewhere else? And it's a tragedy for the people on Partridge Hill Road if they've had 30 years of problems with that road. Why aren't we addressing that at a town meeting, at a warrant, that's a standalone warrant, and get the damn thing taken care of? We don't have to look for somebody else to do it. We're a town, we're all residents, let's fix it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Jerry Frank again. I have a question for the planning board. If this gets passed, what are the rules that, or maybe this would be for the zoning board if anybody's here, what are the rules, like the setbacks that are applicable to different zoning areas? Which one, are there certain setbacks and zoning restrictions that, such as those that apply to any residential neighborhood or a commercial neighborhood or anything like that? In other words, does any of the zoning rules carry over to an overlay area?
Thank you.
Yes.
So basically, right now, for a large-scale solar array like this, it would be 100 feet away from a residential area. And it wouldn't be allowed to touch 100 feet from the boundary line. And they have to go around the wetlands, so they would have to follow all the conservation issues all the conservation rules and regulations that come up with those issues. So if there's a wetland, they have to stay there 100 feet away or 200 feet away, whatever the wetland rules and regulations are. And in the bylaws, it does say that they will provide for screening.
Yes.
So, separate question, and this one's to the planning board also, is since Partridge Hill Road has been not completed for 20 years or something, why has the following not happened, or could the following happen? Could the planning board put a lien on that property, assuming that this article tonight gets voted down? Can you put a lien on this property and take it from the developer because he hasn't completed the road, as I'm sure was supposed to?
It's a legal question, but I don't think so.
I don't know what the town had in place for a covenant with the developer back in the 70s when the road was started. Today, we would be able to do that, but back then, I don't know what the covenant was or what was basically agreed to with the town. The issue is what is this land worth? Is it worth $75,000 to somebody to buy this piece of land and for us to sell it and then take that money and use it to fix the road? That's what it would come down to, because that's basically what it's costing to fix the road, and that's what the solar company is willing to pay to fix the road.
Mr. Valiakonis on the road.
He was on the planning board. I wish I had this.
On the road, you can't use public money to improve a private road. It's against the law. You also can't use Chapter 90 money, so when you see road projects going on in town, that's Chapter 90 money to improve a private road. The dilemma is you have a private road that's been there for 30 years. This is really a way to improve it. The board at the town meeting in May deferred action on this because what they wanted was an agreement between the town and the developer. And we have that agreement between the town and the developer. The developer is going to improve the road at his own cost and file a bond on top of it to guarantee that if he walks away and he doesn't hold to his word, the town can complete the work. There is no bond security for this project, so if you look at the history of this, there was a covenant that was in place many, many years ago. The covenant was released. There was a bond that was in place. The bond expired and the bond was released. I think the last check there's under $1,000 or $200 left for work to complete this project. So there really is, if you look only at the road issue, there's really no other way to address the road other than this situation that we're here tonight. Thank you.
Gentleman at the back.
Jeffrey Majo, Partridge Hill Road. Just in the interest of keeping this conversation fact-based, I would like to contest the assertion that solar, large-scale solar, is a manufacturing process. I think that's an unfounded opinion, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find that characterized anywhere in the literature. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes.
Lori Smith, Pierpont Road. I just wanted to address one of the comments that was made. I have no doubt that the town is doing what they think is right as far as trying to get some revenue for the town. I'm a lifelong resident. I have no plans in moving out of Dudley, but no, not without me. But anyways, this is changing the whole character of the town. I personally would like to see solar farms limited because it is an eyesore. On our webpage, you put pictures of the farms. I doubt we're going to have a picture of any of these solar farms on our website promoting Dudley, because that is what it's going to turn into. And while we need the money, I think there's got to be another way that we can do it other than selling our soul for it. And that's what I think this is going to do. And my heart does go out to the people on Partridge Hill Road. I think way back in the 70s, the town did them a disservice by not keeping enough money in case the developer walked away. From what Mr. Balcona said, I don't think there's a way to go after the current owner for that right now, but perhaps there could be something that could be addressed to help them in the future, short of doing this. Thank you.
Mr. Fox, and then Mr. Joseph.
I think we have a double-edged sword. We have the Economic Development Committee trying to promote economics in the town, but also the Economic Development Committee is also trying to promote agriculture and farming. So we want development on one hand, at the same time we're trying to promote agriculture and farming. If you listen to the Conservation Land Trust Committee, they're trying to preserve as much open land as they possibly can. So this proposal is a double-edged sword for the town.
Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, very simply, could I ask your permission, Mr. Moderator, borrowing new information, new statements of new information, could we move the question along? And that's not a motion to move the question, that's a request.
Considered. Thanks. Yes.
Marcia Wagner, Hickory Drive. The Economic Development Committee, I don't know what happened to this, did a survey. It was online, and there were a lot of replies. And one of the questions was, how do people want to see the town progress for economic development? Solar energy was there, like bottom of the list as far as all the people surveyed. I can think of 250 answers to that survey. John Breyer published all of that information.
Pat Fanning French, Partridge Hill Road. The reality of it is, this land is not going to turn into a farm, okay? It's privately owned by people who live in California, okay? So it's going to be either developed or have a solar farm. It's not going to be farmed, and it's not going to be probably donated to be open space. That's the reality of it. As my neighbor said, if there are 25 houses built on that land, that's a burden on our school system, the police, the fire, everything else. So you have to weigh the benefits, okay? Because it's not going to be open space, and it's not going to be a farm. That's the reality of it.
I just want to go back and see if I can get an answer to the question I had before. Is the covenant, whether it maybe, that was 40, 50 years old, is it not valid? Is it not usable legally to take that piece of land in court to pay for the road on Partridge Hill Road?
Mr. Ruda?
Because there was a covenant.
Through the moderator, Mr. Frank, we didn't start with a solar farm in order to fix the road. We started with legal research to see if it was still valid. We did not start with the idea of trying to get an overlay district passed in order to put up a solar farm in order to fix or make the road acceptable. We started with the legal background of the road. We've sent it through legal counsel. It's a false hope to think that there is any legal remedy. to try and to enforce this covenant. It was poorly done 30 years ago, and it's not going to get any better.
Mr. Sullivan?
And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out a couple statements I'd like to make. One of the previous speakers was on the planning board for a while. He would have served while that subdivision was in some form of being worked on, not completed. And the previous speaker who talked about the Conservation Trust people, they have a great mission, they've done a lot. When that land goes into protection, the town gets zero money. So every time 1 acre goes into Conservation Land Trust, if it's privately owned, that comes off the tax rolls, it becomes a non-tax-paying entity. I think someone said it, it's not going to be a farm, it may be developed, once again, that's speculation, similar to what we had earlier. The amount of houses is just a number. But though I just want to point those two things out. Conservation Land Trust does not, it says Dudley Conservation Land Trust, they are not a town entity, they do not pay tax. So if this person turned around and said, I want to give 42 acres to the Conservation Land Trust, it'd be great. Another place to go hike if you want, or go sit by a stream, it'll generate zero tax dollars.
Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, try to answer a previous speaker's questions rather than address them by name. That covenant expired many years ago. The town willingly let the land sit fallow. If we were to try to resurrect or place a lien on that land, it would absolutely be contested by the owners of the land, and what we would recoup would not cover our legal costs. That's why I would not place a lien on it.
Mr. Carmignani?
Yeah, there we go. That's the treasurer, he knows.
Rich Carmignani, 49 Airport Road. Get off my lawn, damn it. For clarification, if a piece of land is taken for non-payment of taxes, it's donated. It's my understanding the levy is reapportioned, so the town doesn't lose their $1,000 or whatever the taxes would have been. You just end up paying your extra dollar, and I pay my extra dollar. John Marcy pays an extra $3. So that's sort of how it works.
And that parcel no longer generates,
But it doesn't, but we don't lose anything off of the recap sheet. We don't take a step back, it's just reapportioned.
Thanks.
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Ruda?
I hate to see everyone here go into, before we vote, going into this with the premise that the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board are going into this blind. I'm not even sure where that premise comes from. If you're going to vote tonight on whether or not this overlay district should be approved, you should not think that based on what a previous speaker said, that there's toxic chemicals that are going to leach into the groundwater. I mean, that's not new science here. This is we're talking about a solar farm in 2018. This is not new science where it's voodoo medicine, where people are going to be poisoned and all these terrible things are going to happen. That's a desperate attempt to stop this vote from going through. The reason we're here tonight is to decide what the community wants to do. I've sat very quietly and tried not to, and try to figure where we went wrong in informing the community as to what this project really was, as opposed to what this project is being made into, is being portrayed as. This project is a means of fixing a wrong that has hung over this town for the residents of that community since the 70s. And it's a good way to do it. It's a way where we fix the street, we get it accepted, and it doesn't open up a floodgate of, well, let's just find the money and fix the street. Well, that's fine, but what do we do with the other 10 or 11 streets that need the same treatment, that were screwed up in the 70s and 80s and were not repaired to this point in time? Do we pay for 11 streets because we're paying for this one through tax increases, or do we try to find more dynamic ways of doing it? We can't go any further from here. If it dies on the vine here, it dies on the vine. The people have spoken, but the bottom line is, if you want the answers, approve the overlay district, give it to the planning board and go to a public hearing, and then we'll give you the answers. when we figure them out, collectively, not through people with preconceived ideas as to what this project is.
Mr. Massey?
Just another note about investment into the town. A previous speaker said there's got to be another way. There's got to be, let's do this a different way. I'd like certain people to come and tell me what that way is. And then we could discuss it as a board. Again, as volunteers, we all have our strengths that we'd like to bring forward. We're reacting to people who want to invest in the town at a higher level. We're talking about an article to do an overlay district. I'm not a huge fan of solar either, but I am a fan of public safety, schools, veterans, seniors, the beach, all the stuff that, street lights, all the stuff that, people will call me about all the time. That's important. When you have to tell people, well, we can't do it now, that's, I feel like I failed. I feel like we failed. So when you take a lever away to progress, to move forward as a town, there's no other way. I'd like people to come forward with other ideas, and let's talk about them.
Mr. Shaw?
But my point is we're reacting to what people want to do and spend money in Dudley. That's what we're doing.
Tim Shore, 8 Michael Lane. Is it my understanding that a Res 87 is a 2-acre minimum? And if we have been told that approximately 50% of this 42 acres is usable, my guess would be that 50%, if it perked, would be buildable for residential purposes, which translates into what, maybe a dozen homes. Not a huge development of 25 homes. Second question is, what is the anticipated revenue for this solar farm? What are we essentially trading off here?
Mr. Ballycos?
So hasn't been an agreement entered into yet, so I can only tell you the ones that we have right now bring in the range of $100,000 a year to the town. The largest one is out in West Dudley. That'll bring in about $48,000 a year. The other two developments bring in a little bit less than that, but those are 20-year agreements. Those are 20-year guarantees that the town will receive $48,000 to $50,000 a year for a single solar project, and going forward, that money continues and increases a percentage every year. So it's a pretty certain bet to the town. We like the pilot agreements because otherwise the property gets assessed as personal property, and there's a whole host of things. You can't lien personal property, so keep that in mind. Someone doesn't pay their personal property tax bill, state law says you can't lien it. However, there are remedies available if someone doesn't pay their payment in lieu of tax agreement, and we can take legal actions accordingly. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea.
Yes, Mr. Horn.
Also, to address the previous speaker, or the two previous speakers, making a statement about the number of houses that could be built on that property. The town of Dudley has an open space residential subdivision bylaw. In this particular instance, because of where the land is and how much that's available, there could be an upwards of 40 or 50 houses built on that land if it was going with an open space residential subdivision. Just so you know.
Yes, new voice.
I'm Jack Hurst from 15 Camelot Circle, and I'm kind of getting in here kind of late to know if it is a deal to be done tonight, what kind of electricity can we get out of this deal, other than money? where is the electricity going to? Is it going to be shipped down to New York? Is it going to be shipped down to Connecticut? We're not going to get anything. I'd like to make a deal on that. I've been up to the White Mountains, to a farming community, and it's beautiful, beautiful White Mountains. And they got the windmills going like this. And I said, well, that's great for your community. It's not. It's being shipped all the way to Connecticut for an eyesore. So make a deal, get some money, get some electricity from them instead of just real money. Thank you.
Why not?
There was another hand, I just, okay. Yeah.
Good idea.
Jerry Frank again. So I just think that one thing that we haven't considered here is that everyone in Dudley uses electricity, and, you know, it's pretty clear to me that as time goes on, we need to switch over to renewable sources. And so, you know, we have somewhat of a responsibility for finding responsible sources of electricity for all of us in Dudley to use, and I'm not sure if the number of solar panels and windmills or whatever generates in hydro that's generated in Dudley today is, you know, coming close to what the town as a whole is using. But I think that's you know, there's a moral issue here that I think we need to take responsibility for creating renewable energy that we use in town. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I'm sorry. Moral issues aside, I move the question.
Question's been moved.
Did you forget? It requires a second. Right. And no discussion.
Question's been moved. We will go ahead and take our vote. We will do it as a standing vote.
Needs a second.
Those in favor will stand.
Mr. Moderator, we're gonna second that for procedural purposes and discussion, bring it to a vote.
Fine. Yeah.
Second.
Seconded, moved, and motion's been made for move and seconded. Discussion.
No discussion
No
on the
discussion,
motion.
I'm sorry. All right. So we've got a, just a moment. All right. As this does require a 2/3 vote, that's required to come to a decision or to approve, we will do a standing vote, so that way there's no confusion for us. Voice vote, it just will not work in this room. All in favor of the motion as written, please stand.
Any counters?
Mr. Joseph, stand for.
It's going down. It's going down.
I knew he was gonna do this.
32.
Got it? 32 out of 51, right?
32.
17, 34, here we go. 34.
Thank you. I have 32 ayes. Opposed?
Fails.
Was that 19?
19.
Fails.
32 and 19.
51, you needed 34, you needed 2 more people. You need 2 more people. That'll work. Fucking Carmignano wants us to fight for that fucking camper. Mr. Treasurer, when he puts his raise in next year, I'm putting him down
Yeah,
to
I'm
zero.
not fitting my 19.
Can't afford it.
Yep. That's what I got too. This motion has been defeated, 32 votes to 19.
Was it 30 what?
32 in favor, 19 opposed. We required 34.
Quarter pass.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.